Now we are finally, after all the anticipation, entering the NFL Draft 2021 first round starting April 29th and then second round. And we're going to cover all of this going forward. Today, we're going to focus on draft day trades that the Minnesota Vikings can take in the first round. We're going to talk about rumors, and we're going to talk about my decisions, my expectations that I have for the Minnesota Vikings. First thing to note, what do the Vikings need? Vikings need, all caps, Vikings need offensive line. Yes, Vikings need linebacker, safety, all of those things, but no, first round, Vikings need offensive line. Vikings can go wide receiver, and I'm fine with that. Vikings can go corner, and I'm okay. But Vikings need offensive line. And that is what we are focusing on, because how can the Vikings utilize the most out of their draft picks to get the best offensive line? Because going into this free agency, going into the 2021 offseason, offensive line was the biggest need for the Minnesota Vikings, and there was no doubt about that. Since then, the Vikings' offensive line has only gotten worse. Vikings haven't brought back Brett Jones yet. Vikings lost Vikings lost Riley Reef. Now Rashad Hill is our starting left tackle, which, yes, I'm a big Rashad Hill guy. I love Rashad Hill as a backup. I am not ready to see Rashad Hill start this upcoming season at left tackle, protecting for Kirk Cousins' blind spot when we are paying Kirk Cousins this much money. Kirk Cousins may not be injury prone, but he needs the most pocket time he can possibly get because the rest of the offensive line is not going to do that. I am telling you right now, if Dakota Dozier starts another season at left guard, we will not win the division. It will not happen. If Garrett Bradbury cannot learn somehow to protect for Kirk Cousins, he has done an excellent job. And I'm not a Garrett Bradbury hater. He has done an excellent job blocking for Dalvin Cook. And I love to see it happen. He has done a terrible job coming from a first-round draft pick, a terrible job blocking for Kirk Cousins. And for that reason, I am not comfortable with these guys starting. Ezra Cleveland, I need to see a lot more from him. I am not convinced that he is ready to be a starting left tackle. Yes, he was drafted last year, 2020, in the second round out of Boise State to be a left tackle. I'm not ready to see that because I was not convinced that he is ready to be a left tackle. And now we're going to take a look at potential draft day trades that the Minnesota Vikings can look for. There's 5 quarterbacks that are going to go in the first round this year. No less, no more. There's 5 quarterbacks going in the first round. The first 3 draft picks will be quarterbacks. We know Trevor Lawrence is going to the Jaguars. We know Zach Wilson is going to the Jets. And we know the 49ers are going to take one of the leftover quarterbacks. That will either be Justin Fields, that will be Trey Lance, or Mac Jones. One of those quarterbacks are going to go to the 49ers. After that, there is 2 quarterbacks that are going to be on the board. What teams are looking for quarterbacks that are picking before the Minnesota Vikings? We have the Detroit Lions, who definitely need a quarterback because Jared Goff is their quarterback. They're not taking a quarterback in the first round of this year. They're going to go wide receiver, offensive line. They're going to go tight end. Well, probably not tight end, but most likely wide receiver. They're going to go with something like that in the first round. And we're not going to talk about the Vikings trading up with the Detroit Lions simply because they are division rival here. Other teams, Carolina Panthers, they definitely could be looking to a quarterback because they are starting Sam Darnold this upcoming season. With that being said, they have bigger needs than quarterback. I don't expect them to take a quarterback. Denver Broncos need a quarterback. Drew Lock is not the future. Drew Lock is not their franchise guy. They need a quarterback. Those are 4 quarterbacks right there. And like I said, there's 5 quarterbacks that are going in the first round here. And you take a look at picks 9 through 13, none of those teams need quarterbacks. Yes, I guess the Giants could go quarterback. It wouldn't really make sense because Daniel Jones was a first-round draft pick. Jalen Hurts, the Eagles have, who showed a lot of promise. Justin Herbert, obviously, the Chargers have, and then Dak with the Cowboys. So there's no reason why any of them should take Mac Jones, assuming Mac Jones is the one left over that nobody wants. Assuming he is left over, none of those teams will take a quarterback. Until the Minnesota Vikings at 14. If the Minnesota Vikings have position at 14 with Mac Jones on the board, teams will trade up. Simply because after the Minnesota Vikings at 14 have the Patriots, teams will trade above the Patriots to take Mac Jones. And there's no question about that. And that's why we're going to take a look at potential trades that the other teams can make. Another thing to note, Minnesota Vikings don't have a second-round draft pick. And there's a quarterback on the board. I have watched a lot of drafts, and I know teams are willing to give up their entire future for a franchise quarterback like Mac Jones, who, yes, he has a lot of red flags. There's a possibility he could be another bust, but teams will be willing to take a chance on a quarterback like Mac Jones, who can be their franchise guy. Now let's take a look at teams who need quarterbacks who are picking after the Minnesota Vikings. The Patriots at 15, and this is the reason why teams will trade with the Minnesota Vikings, and the Minnesota Vikings will have trade offers if a quarterback is available. Now we're saying Mac Jones here, but realistically it could be Justin Fields, it could be Trey Lance. I really doubt it will be Trey Lance, but Justin Fields or Mac Jones, it's possible one of those two quarterbacks could be available at the 14th overall pick, depending on what quarterbacks go to the top 4 teams that I already mentioned. Now, the Patriots are at 15. Patriots will not trade up. It is not in Bill Belichick's blood to trade up in the first round ever. Bill Belichick does trade up, and this is something people don't realize. Bill Belichick loves to trade up. Thing is, he's not going to trade up in the first round. He loves to do this somewhere else in the days. But after that, we have the Raiders at 17. Now, Raiders, yes, they have Derek Carr. Thing with Derek Carr, though, he hasn't proved anything. I mean, yes, he's proved that he's an okay quarterback. He's proven that he has a good arm, that if he has enough top pocket time, he can make a play. He hasn't won a single playoff game, and he's been with the team for how long now? 6, 7 years, whatever. Derek Carr is equivalent with Kirk Cousins, where they have proven how good they are. They stay healthy, and that's the reason why why they're with their teams as long as they are. The difference between Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr is this. Kirk Cousins is with the Minnesota Vikings making a lot of money, making a lot of guaranteed money. Minnesota Vikings will not go pick a quarterback. It just doesn't make sense. Raiders, though, Derek Carr has been on the trade block for 2 years now? Yes, it's just rumors, and that might not even actually be true, but rumors are typically true. Rumors are just insider knowledge that is blown way out of proportion. That's what rumors are, and they're proven that they are usually true. So for that reason, if Derek Carr is on the trade block, you have Mac Jones, who is literally Derek Carr. Mac Jones is a second Derek Carr, which is why him sitting behind Derek Carr, him developing, he could be better. He could be what the Raiders need. And for that reason, the Raiders are at 17 and could possibly trade up with the Minnesota Vikings and take Mac Jones. Thing is, there is one team on this list that will be willing to give up more, and that is Washington. Washington is sitting at 19. Washington is in an easy division and is a franchise quarterback away from honestly making a run to the Super Bowl at this point. They're in a division where they are a quarterback away. Their offense has a lot of young playmakers. Terry McLaurin has impressed us all these last 2 seasons, his first 2 seasons in the NFL, coming out of, I don't remember his college, but he was a 3rd-round draft pick. Antonio Gibson, Logan Thomas, these are players that Washington has on their offense, but they have Fitzpatrick throwing to them now. Now, nothing against Fitzpatrick. Thing is, he's old and he's very injury prone. He is not the future. He's on a 1-year contract for a reason, because the uncertainty with his career right now. This might be his last season in the NFL. And for that reason, you bring in a quarterback like Mac Jones, assuming Fitzpatrick does get injured, you have Mac Jones who steps in, and Fitzpatrick can be the rotational guy into Mac Jones. And then they can run their division. Because yes, I just talked about their offense. Their defense is even better. They have one of the best defensive fronts in the NFL. Outside of that, their secondary is pretty good too. And they're all on their rookie contracts, just to add to how good their defense is already. So for that reason, Washington should trade up, and Washington will trade up with the Minnesota Vikings if Mac Jones, or I guess Justin Fields, I have to put it there because people will always say Mac Jones is better than Justin Fields or whatever, but teams will trade up if one of these quarterbacks are available at the 14th overall pick. And then we have other teams that I'm going to mention because they need quarterbacks. That is the Bears at 20. Bears, obviously, we're not going to talk about them. That's the Colts at 21, and then the Saints at 28. All 3 of these teams will not offer. Even if the Bears were... Even if the Bears weren't a division rival, I honestly still think they would not trade up because I just feel like what happened with the last time they traded up for a quarterback, and they only have like 5 draft picks in this upcoming draft, so there's no reason why the Bears would trade up, even if it wasn't the Minnesota Vikings, but especially since it's a division rival, they will not trade up for a quarterback, and those 3 teams that after that, I don't think so. So we're going to focus on the Raiders and Washington because both of those teams could offer their 1st-round draft pick and a 2nd-round draft pick. Because we've seen what teams are willing to give up for quarterbacks. Rick Spielman could get a 2nd-round draft pick. That would be huge. He can get that 17th or 19th overall pick. These teams will trade above the Patriots. They can get those picks and draft an offensive tackle, Christian Darrisaw, because I'm not comfortable taking Darrisaw at 14. I don't know about you guys, but that's a bit of an overdraft. That's just drafting for need. I don't like drafting for need. I like drafting for value. I like drafting for whoever the best player is available who's going to make a biggest impact on your team. Drafting Darrisaw will make a big impact on your team, but he's not going to be the best player available at the 14th overall pick. And for that reason, I think trading down would be the best, where 17 and 19, I'd be a lot more comfortable with the Vikings going offensive tackle there. At 14, though, Vikings can only get Rashaan Slater. and he's a great offensive tackle, and I really hope the Vikings can get him. Thing is, right now, what is surfacing around the NFL or around the Minnesota Vikings? Trading up for Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell. I don't know why this is such a big conversation right now, as there is no way this is going to happen. Let's take a look at this draft board again, and I'm going to explain why the Vikings will not trade up for Penei Sewell. Rashaan Slater, yes, and we're going to get into that. But first, we're going to focus on what a lot of people are talking about, and that is Penei Sewell. So let's take a look at these picks. So assuming the first four players off the board are all quarterbacks, of course, I'm saying here Atlanta is not going to draft a quarterback at 4. I'm expecting that the Broncos will trade up. So take the first 4 quarterbacks off the board, and then we're going to look at the 5th overall pick. Now, yes, Bengals have a lot of options here. They can go Jamar Chase, who was Joe Burrow's teammate. They can go Kyle Pitts. They can go Penei Sewell. I think they're going to go with an offensive weapon here, and then Penei Sewell will fall a bit. I don't think the Dolphins will go with a left tackle because they took a tackle in the first 2 rounds of last year's draft. I do think they will either go Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase here, depending on what Cincinnati takes. After that, you have the Lions are on the clock. Lions could go Kyle Pitts if he's available. I do think the Lions will go wide receiver here because they just lost all their wide receivers. And then now you have the 8th overall pick. If Penei Sewell is available here, and the Vikings are not going to trade up with any of these teams, Vikings can trade up with the Dolphins at 6, and that's the only way they're going to get Penei Sewell. That would make absolutely no sense. The reason why it would make no sense is because the Vikings are not a left tackle away from winning the Super Bowl. They aren't. Yes, left tackle is the biggest need that we have. We are not a left tackle away. And for that reason, giving up 2 first-round draft picks, which is what you would need to get up trading to that 6th overall pick, would not be worth it for Penei Sewell. That is what you do for quarterbacks, because quarterbacks have just a lot more value. Rashan Slater is a close second, and for that reason, we have to look at the Vikings targeting him over targeting Penei Sewell. So here, if Sewell does fall, he will fall to the Carolina Panthers at 8, where he will go, and then Rashaan Slater will be the best left tackle on the board. Where the Vikings will likely not be able to get Rashaan Slater at 14 because they have the Chargers above them, they have the Eagles who will likely take Rashaan Slater, but the Vikings can trade up with possibly whoever's at 9, 10, and 11, and that's where the Vikings can get Rashaan Slater and just give up a little bit, trading up a couple spots. So, who should the Vikings target? Who do I want to see the Vikings have? I would, please, my biggest want here is for the Vikings to get Rashaan Slater. There is so much uncertainty and so much doubt I have on this Vikings offensive line right now because of what I've seen these last 2 years. Not only with our offensive line, but with Kirk Cousins. Now, I don't want to talk bad on my quarterback. I love Kirk Cousins, and I think he gets way too much hate. But you have to invest more into that offensive line if you want to get the best value, the most value, the best Kirk Cousins that you can get. You need to invest more into that offensive line because he is a great accurate passer, and he's an excellent pocket passer. Thing is, where's the pocket? I mean, defensive linemen are going untouched with this offensive line. I don't want to see Dakota Dozier start another season. I don't want to see Rashad Hill at left tackle. Ezra Cleveland, I want to see him somewhere on the starting lineup, but I don't want to see him at left tackle. And for that reason, Vikings getting Rashaan Slater would be huge. Having him as our left tackle would be such a relief. You're not going to be able to get him at 14. Yes, last year Tristan Wurtz did fall to the 13th overall pick. We're not going to see something like that this year. Because last year there was a lot of offensive tackles going in the top 10. This year there's only 2 that would make sense to go in the top 10. Let's take a look at other players that could be available at the 14th overall pick that the Vikings could trade down. These players are Rashaan Slater. Now, it's possible he could be available at the 14th overall pick. Vikings would get very lucky if he is. If Rashaan Slater is available at 14, Vikings would be even more lucky than Justin Jefferson being available last year. Ooh, that's rough though. But Rashaan Slater, obviously, his draft value is a lot higher than Justin Jefferson's was last year, so it's very hard to compare the two. So Rashaan Slater, if he's available at 14, that will be an immediate. There's no reason why the Vikings would trade down. Just take him. Patrick Surtain, he's another player who could be available at 14, depending on what the Cowboys and Giants do. He could be available at 14, or Eagles. Eagles could also take him. If he is available, I do think, again, Vikings should just draft him. He's the best player available. Trading down wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. You have Patrick Peterson and Mackenzie Alexander, who you just brought in on 1-year contracts. Patrick Surtain can be your starting corner, not this upcoming season, but the season after that. Same with J.C. Horn, who could be available at 14, and then Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle, who are 2 Alabama wide receivers who could be available at 14, that once again, Vikings should draft. And I'm going to say this, and I might get hate, but I'm going to say this. Vikings, I would be totally fine with the Vikings taking a wide receiver in the first round. Yes, we have an excellent wide receiver duo right now. With Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, we have a tremendous wide receiver duo. Thing is, you don't just want a good wide receiver duo, you want an excellent wide receiver core. You want an excellent wide receiver group. That's what we don't have right now. We just lost Kyle Rudolph, who, yes, his last season didn't get a whole lot of targets, but he was a big impact in the red zone. We have our wide receiver duo right there, and we saw with the Buccaneers, I'm going to use the Buccaneers as an example here. We saw with the Buccaneers how important it is to have a deep elite group of wide receivers. They had Chris Godwin and Mike Evans as their wide receiver duo, which you look at that and you look like that's all they really need. Outside of that, they had Antonio Brown, Scotty Miller, Tyler Johnson. That is an excellent wide receiver group right there. All of those guys I just named could possibly be wide receiver 1 and 2s. But since they've stacked up for Tom Brady, which is what the Vikings are not going to be able to do because we don't have the cap space, but we could do that in the draft. If you stack up on playmakers, it's huge. It goes a long way, especially if you get a player like Devontae Smith, what Devontae Smith and Justin Jefferson have in common, you don't need a whole lot of pocket time to actually pass to them. I mean, Adam Thielen, he's not the best after the catch. He's a great route runner, but you need more time for him to really get to pass to him. Justin Jefferson and Devontae Smith can make plays after the catch, just like what we saw with Dalvin Cook this last year. They can make multiple plays after the catch, which would be huge for the Minnesota Vikings. And that's why I'd be totally fine with the Vikings taking a corner in the first round again, or a wide receiver in the first round, is for the exact same reason that we need an elite wide receiver group and we need an elite cornerback group, simply because, yes, we did bring in Justin Jefferson and Mackenzie Alexander, but once again, they're on one-year contracts and we have a lot of injuries. Jeff Gladney, Cameron Dantzler, Mike Hughes, they were all injured last year. We need better corners. I'm going to say that right now. Our starting corners are great. Our starting corners are excellent. Thing is, they're going to get injured, and we know that for sure. They are going to get injured. Patrick Peterson, too. You brought in another injury-prone corner. So those are two trades that we have to look at. Vikings trading up for an offensive lineman. That's the only reason. Vikings are not going to trade up for anything else other than an offensive lineman. And the Vikings trading down if a quarterback is still available. Not because Vikings should trade down, because yes, we have a lot of needs, but because of what the Vikings can get if a quarterback is available, because teams are willing to give up a first and a second to get a quarterback. Vikings can acquire a second-round draft pick and take an offensive lineman in the first round. I would love to see either one of these things happen, because I'm very, very doubtful on this Vikings offensive line right now. I have little hope for Ezra Cleveland. I'm sorry, for our entire offensive line, especially with Dakota Dozier. Rashad Hill, I'm a huge Rashad Hill fan, but I'm not very comfortable with him starting too. I just don't want to see that happen. Ezra Cleveland, okay, I'll cut him some slack. He was a rookie. I just wasn't convinced that he's ready to be a left tackle. I've seen him, and he can play guard. I'm okay with him playing left guard. I would be very happy if he could play left guard over Dakota Dozier, and Vikings could bring in a guard to play right guard, and Vikings could bring in a rookie to play left tackle. That would be a lot better of an offensive line, and I'd be very comfortable with that happening. So let me know what y'all think. How do you think this first round for the Minnesota Vikings will go? Thank you all for tuning into this episode of Morning Kickoff. Have a great day.